LandPaths. LandPaths is the nonprofit I joined and moved to Santa Rosa for. The organization has 3 main initiatives: outdoor education, outings, and stewardship. I recently began as a seasonal fuel specialist on the stewardship team. I work on a dynamic crew that ranges from 3 to 8 people on any given day of the week. Our primary focus is to manage fuel load or steward land with regard to fire resiliency at 4 of LandPaths preserves. Fire resiliency stewardship looks like cutting down small trees to protect old-growth forests, removing invasive species that create dense understory brush like French broom, creating defensible space around buildings, and burning piles of material cut to bring forests back to a healthy condition. So much of the work we do is limited by the size of our crew and the time we have. One of my favorite things about LandPaths is the importance of community involvement. LandPaths strives to get people from all walks of life involved in the work we do so that we can feel connected, like they're part of something bigger than themselves, and educate the public on how to care for the land. Whether it's leading volunteer groups to help thin out forest understory or working with young stewardship interns to get them connected with the outdoors, LandPaths values strive to lead with nature and cultivate a common purpose. So much more gets done when you have more people to do the work. And then on top of that, creating positive relationships with nature where people see themselves as part of a bigger network is what keeps volunteers coming back. The preserves we work at are Bohemia, Ocean Song, Riddell, and Rancho Mark West. We focus on different projects at each preserve, but all fall under the umbrella of fire resiliency and restoration. Fire resiliency and restoration is considered a new topic to the colonized world of ecology, but predates colonization of North America and time immemorial. Indigenous tribes of this country stewarded land so well when California was originally colonized, the Spanish characterized the land as looking like a pristine park. The native people depended on land for food, shelter, and transit, so caring for the land in ways that benefited them in turn benefited the plants and animals around. This process of tending to the land took thousands of years to get it to the place colonizers saw. At LandPaths, we give land acknowledgements every day we work in the field to recognize the first and continuing stewards of the land we stand on. The preserves we work on encompass the ancestral territory of the Coast Miwok, Wapo, and Pomo people, and we acknowledge that these lands were taken by acts of force that devastated native communities. The thing I truly appreciate being a part of the LandPaths team is that although we make verbal acknowledgements, we also are working as an organization to employ, receive guidance from, and meet native people where they're at. It makes my heart feel full learning about the native people of this area and potentially getting to work side by side with those who cared for the land far before we got here. Bohemia is a 1,000-acre ecological preserve located near Occidental that contains many different habitats. There are old-growth Douglas fir forests, oak woodlands, chaparral, coastal prairie, meadows, redwoods, and mixed hardwood forests. One of the most special parts of the preserve is its high concentration of serpentinite. Serpentinite, also known as serpentine soil, is a light green rock that is high in mineral content and low in nutrients, which then encourages rare endemic plants to thrive within the preserve. It's also the state rock of California, which is cool. Bohemia offers our widest array of stewardship projects. At the beginning of the season, we primarily remove French broom. French broom is an invasive plant in the pea family that is removed by hand pulling and requires the roots to be removed so it doesn't grow back. The issue with this invasive is that its seeds can remain dormant into the soil for up to 40 years undisturbed, so repeated treatment is needed in areas every 2 years, aka what we call in conservation as job security. We also worked at a spot on the preserve called the Top of the Universe with young stewards cutting down small Douglas fir trees to open up understory, protect hardwood trees like oaks, and help protect meadows, coniferous trees encroach upon. We got to show high school and college interns the basics on how to fall trees, and it was personally really cool to see all these young people using manual tools out in remote areas of the preserve. It reminded me of the work I'd been doing up at Lassen, and it made me really happy. On top of that, I got to use my axe, which I miss doing. One of my favorite things about working in this area was that the Douglas firs grew really skinny and really tall, so it only took a few swings of the axe to cut them down. Other areas we've been working on at Bohemia are accessible roads and trails to cut shaded fuel breaks. A shaded fuel break uses established roads or trails as a potential access point to fight wildfire if it were to get into the preserve. The fuels crew has been falling Douglas fir trees, pole sawing hardwoods, selectively cutting small hardwoods, and thinning out understory brush in these areas. The goal is to thin out the overhead canopy directly above the road and the understory on either side of the road. Lastly, the rains have made an early appearance this fall, so we've been clearing culverts as well as cutting new water bars in the roads to prevent erosion and runoff. Ocean Song is another preserve in West County that has many ecological wonders. The Myers property adjacent to Ocean Song was recently acquired by LandPaths and doubled the preserve's size to 800 acres. The connection of these two properties has helped create linkage for wildlife travel between Sonoma and Marin County. This allows animals to migrate freely without fence or roadway restrictions. At Ocean Song, we're mainly doing defensible space with potential for chipping and burning material cut. Defensible space focuses on protecting structures like barns, homes, and water tanks. Since LandPaths recently acquired Ocean Song, there's a lot of stewardship work to be done, and this is just the first step. We've been removing coyote brush, coastal live oaks, poison oak, and other foliage from around the pole barn, the largest structure on the property. Defensible space requires a slightly more aggressive or selective approach at cutting, but is not completely clear cutting. Within 100 feet of the structures, we leave a few coyote brush and live oaks for habitat, but try to keep everything well spaced. Poison oak is a native plant to California, but if you're allergic, you probably detest it. We cut back all the poison oak in these areas to increase access for volunteers and school outing groups once the preserve is open to the public. All of the work we've done thus far has great road access, so we've been hauling cut material up to the open grasslands for piling and eventually burning once it stops raining so much. The goal with burning at Ocean Song is to have a few primary piles to ignite and then have large feeder piles where we can continue to add material to the pile that's already burning. I like this approach because it keeps you involved with burning and it reduces risks of fire getting out of hand. I love all of the preserves we work at, but coming in every day and seeing the marine layer and ocean is something really, really special about this place.
We came prepared today.
Yeah, give us a show.
Riddell is an amazing 400-acre preserve near Healdsburg that is the home of some of the biggest madrone trees I've ever seen living in California. The preserve contains beautiful mixed hardwood forests, oak woodlands, native grasslands, and redwood forests. About 70% of the preserve burned in the LNU complex fires in 2020, so restoration efforts are strong at this preserve. We've spent most of our days working at Riddell, whether it's leading volunteer groups, working with LandPaths donors, or hanging out with young stewards. We need every hand on deck for the amount of French broom that needs to be removed here. The density in which French broom grows poses a huge fire hazard and limits access for wildlife and native plants to grow. Since Riddell contains mostly mixed hardwoods and grasslands, removing Douglas firs is important to maintain forest health and reduce fire hazards as well. When habitats have historically adapted to fire go unburned and unmanaged, the forest will begin to choke itself out. Native and non-native plants will compete for the scarce source of water in the West, therefore sucking water out of the water table, furthering drought, and eventually dying, which in turn becomes a fire hazard. Small Douglas fir trees are thinned because of this, even though they are native. They contain a high content of resin or sap, which then makes them highly flammable. They tolerate shade and grow easily under oak canopy. Douglas firs grow fast and tall and eventually surpass the height of the oak, which in turn shades out the hardwoods. Trees like oaks and madrone need a lot of sun to be healthy, so it can set an imbalance which can make the hardwoods sick and die. When trees grow closely together, they catch each other on fire really easily too. They create what is called a fuel ladder, which bumps the fire up into the canopy or crown. If fire comes through, it easily gets into the canopy and can start a crown fire. Maintaining balance within forests are essential to the health of the forest. The forest with the most trees is not necessarily the healthiest one. Another characteristic of Riddell is that many of the trees have been dying from a disease called sudden oak death. When they fall across trails or structures, we do our best to cut and spread out the fuel to be chipped, burned, or scattered to decompose over time. In our most recent project, the fuels crew set out to cut and buck a 26-inch black oak that fell from a big storm and broke the cabin's water line in 2 places. It took 3 days to do and was a really cool learning experience for the new sawyers. More to come in another video. Our last preserve we steward is also the one I live at, Rancho Marquest. Big things have been happening here that deserve its own video, so I think I'll just leave you with a fiery cliffhanger. Until next time.